Okay, so you want to learn how to edit in Davinci Resolve 16. So the first thing we're going to want to do, obviously, is to import some media. There are a couple different ways of doing that. Let me show you just along the bottom here. There's different pages that you can do different functions in the editing process. So first we can click on Media, and that would be normally where you would import your footage into something they call a media pool, which is down here in the bottom section. Actually, both of these are bins, which are basically like folders. And this is where the actual footage would show up. See? Now, if you want to import your folder structure without having to recreate all the bins, there's actually a pretty easy way to do that. Just go to the folder that you want to import. I just want to import this one. And when you drag it down into the media pool, you don't want to let it go here, because then what it does here, I'll show you, it pulls in the actual footage without the folder structure. So I'm just going to undo that, Command Z. And what you actually want to do is you want to drop it onto the left here where your bin structure is, and it converts it to a bin. Now, if there were folders in here, which actually, let me create that real quick for you. So let's say I took the CC folder here, and it has a bunch of folders in it. See, I've got access to all of that stuff, and it's in the same structure as I had on my operating system. So that's one way of doing it. I'm just going to undo that. Another way of doing it is right from the operating system, dragging and dropping, like you might be used to in something like Premiere or Final Cut. And you can actually just drag the footage like this, and it imports it that way too. Same thing with the folder structure. If I do this, it just pulls in the footage. Same mistake we showed earlier, but it works properly if I pull it into the left pane there. Okay, so that's for importing footage. The next step would be to go into either cut or edit. You don't have to use both. Cut is just a quick way of doing your first assembly edit. So edit, this is where you can get really into the nitty gritty of doing L and J cuts in your audio, adding text titles, some of those things you can do in the cut panel, but really you want to be doing that kind of work in your edit panel. And I'll come back to these in a second, but let me just go through the rest of the panels, or pages they call them, along the bottom here. So Fusion is kind of like, if you're used to the Adobe suite, Fusion is like your After Effects, but it's, instead of a layer-based system, it's a node-based system. Then you have your color grading, which I'm assuming you know that Davinci Resolve is mainly a color grading software, or was mainly a color grading software, and now they've recently added in the editing features. And then there's Fairlight, which is this robust audio editing system where you can finish up your audio work. You don't need to. You can also use the edit page. There's a lot of functions you can do with audio here, but nothing compared to Fairlight if you really want to get in depth with sound design. And then the final tab is Deliver, and this is where you would render out your footage. You can do renders in batches, similar to a compressor on Apple I used to use years ago, back when I used Final Cut 7. But also just your basic final renders would come out here. There's a bunch of presets. You can create your own presets, or you can just do a custom setup for what you're trying to render out to. Oh, I almost forgot. We need to create a timeline. So on the edit page, click in this little area here, right click, timelines, create new timeline. We're going to create an empty one, create. And if your viewer here doesn't quite look like mine, it might be because you have to click up in here to switch from 2 monitors to 1. Obviously, whatever your preference is fine. Okay, so let's go back to the cut page and I'll show you around. Here is the playhead in the middle here. There's 2 ways the playhead works in the cut page. It's either locked or it is a free play. Okay, so let's put in a clip to the timeline. So we got something to play. And that way it'll make sense. When you have someone like that in your life. So the first thing you'll notice is that the playhead is locked and the footage is just scrolling through. 2 parts to this timeline here. You have a zoomed in version and then the entire timeline up here. So the more clips I add, it just keeps squishing down this timeline. So you will always see the entire project up here. So no need to zoom in or out. which that can save you a lot of time. Again, depending on how you edit or what kind of content you're editing. And I have another video that goes more into detail with the cut page, so we won't go crazy here, but let me just show you the basic functions. If I grab another clip, let's say, see, I can add this to the timeline here, but I can also add it, let's grab another clip. I can also add it like this way in here. I can either add to the bottom timeline or the top timeline. They're interchangeable. It is the same timeline. It's just showing you in two different ways. Now, what's also cool is that these are interchangeable. So I can grab this and I can put it to the front over here of the project. And vice versa. I can take the end clip here if I want and just move it over a little bit into here. The other cool thing is that they, instead of having to switch between tools all the time, by clicking on a tool and then coming down, obviously there's shortcut keys, and I'm going to show you a few of those later. But also you don't really need to switch between tools because the system knows contextually what the tool should be depending where your cursor is hovered over. See, if I want to shrink this section here, I just hover over to the left of the cut point and I drag and it gives me that kind of function. I can click over to the right of it and it does that kind of a cut. I can click right on it and drag the cut point completely without shifting down the clips. I can also get back more of what was cut off. And from the end point of this cut, if I click to the right of it, but then I push to the left, see, I'm pushing out more of the clip there. Also, I can slip edit by hovering over the middle of the clip and clicking there and dragging. That way I don't mess up either of these cut points. Let's just show you around other areas here. Up here in the top right corner, you can turn off your color grades and effects. You can check the resolution of your project and go deeper into the project settings here, which is the same as the icon down in the bottom right corner. If you look over here on the left, there is insert, append, ripple overwrite, and there's some other tools here. Now, depending where your cursor is, you notice this little white arrow pointing down. It knows that the playhead is closest to this cut. And if you use a smart insert, it will insert that where the closest cut already exists. So that's kind of a new thing for Davinci. Another problem I've seen people actually complain about is the way that footage snaps. Sometimes people don't like, see, that when you get close, when I drag this over here and I get very close, it jumps, right? And that's because snapping's on. It's finding that snap point over here, or a snap point. Really, it's not a problem. It's just because this snapping is on. If you can use the shortcut N on your keyboard, and that will just turn that off. And you can hit it again, turn it back on. So if it's just like you want to get some precision, you can just quickly turn it off, drag exactly where you want, and then turn it back on. So there's that. Another thing that's a little different in the cut page versus the edit page is, actually, let me show you. Let's go into the edit page for a second. If I wanted to just take this clip, for example, and I don't want the audio there. All I want is the video. See the way it gives me an option here to just drag just the video portion of the clip. So that I kind of like. For whatever reason, in the cut page, it doesn't have that automatically. So where you're getting some advantages, you're losing some other things. It is still here. If you go off to the left here, you can click on video only and then do it like that. I'm gonna get my clip back up. And that'll work. But I'm traveling across the entire screen to get there. I don't know why that's missing. Maybe in a future update, they'll fix that. Let's just show one more thing in the cut page and then we'll move on over to the edit page. If you've got a folder open, you see all this footage in here. If I click on this button here, This is a source tape button. What it does is it kind of stitches together all the footage from the first clip that I shot to the last clip. This actually might not be in order in here, but it will put it in order. And so let's say this was a shoot day. When you go near the beginning of the footage, you know that that's probably something happened at the beginning of the day. This would be the middle of the day. This would be near the end of the day. So that's kind of an interesting way of editing your footage, just going right through the day, finding the parts you want to insert and grab them and so on. So, okay, that's enough of the cut page. Let's move on over to the edit page.
Like 99.9% parched here. Could really use a cola.
Okay, so your workspace may or may not actually be laid out the same as mine. So let me just go through, well, you can also reset your entire workspace by clicking up on workspace and reset UI layout. You can also save your own layouts and recall them at will. Okay, so along the top here, media pool. That's our media pool. We need a media pool in order to bring clips into your timeline, but that can be turned off or on. Effects library, we're seeing it down on the bottom here. Edit index, I'll turn that off. And sound library. Okay, on the top right, your mixer, see on the bottom right, actually you see the mixer there. Remove that if you want some more space. Metadata, which is interesting. If you click on a clip over on the left, you can see more details about it. You can actually click here and say all groups, and you can actually edit your metadata there. So if you wanted to fix something that was in the metadata that was inaccurate, or you wanted to add some more information as you go along, you can do that there. Okay, so inspector. I like having this on all the time because I will do little recrops, which is zoom in position, and with the audio as well if I want to automate some of the levels or fix some things in the audio. Okay, zooming in and out, you can use this. You can also use Command plus, Command minus. You can also use this cool trick, which is to just hit your Alt button and your scroll wheel in and out. And all the tools are up here in the middle, your arrow, your trim tool, your blade. You can also access them through shortcut keys. So B on your keyboard will quickly switch to a blade, so you can do some cuts. Click A on the keyboard, gives you back your arrow. T on your keyboard gives you the trim tool. Two functions of the trim tool here. You can either slip edit this section here, or you grab below that and you can move the entire clip. Same as in the cut page, you can click N to get rid of the snapping. And again, to turn it on. This link tool, if you wanted to separate your audio from your video clip, you could just select there and remove that. And now you're editing the audio and the video independently throughout the whole timeline. You can click back on it to relink the clips. You can also link multiple clips together as well by right-clicking once you've selected them and hit link clips. And that way, when I select this one again, now I'm selecting all of those. There's some default zooms, which is kind of nice to have. So full extent zoom will give you everything, a detailed zoom, and then a custom zoom. Also, there's a shortcut key. If you do Shift Z, that zooms you out to everything. So let's zoom in ridiculously. If I hit Shift Z, see I get my whole timeline again in case you lose yourself in your timeline. But if you hit Shift Z again, it puts you back to where you were. So that might help speed things up for you too in your edits. And if you're the type of person who takes a bunch of footage, like say from here, let's take say 6 clips here, and we're going to drag them down into the timeline, and then zoom out here. And then you're going to go through your footage and find your cut points like this. You can actually hit Command B on the keyboard and it'll just cut it wherever your cursor is. So I want to get rid of this. Delete. Cut again. Delete. So it's a quick way of putting together an edit if that's how you do things. And as far as precision, you can zoom right into this, and you can get, especially if you turn off snapping, you can get frame by frame precision like that. You can also do it with your keyboard, which is kind of how I like to do it. I just use my back arrow there and then recut, select it, delete it. It's another way of doing it. Okay, I'll zoom out here. So let's say I wanted to reframe a shot. I'll take this one. Just select it, come up here. You're probably already used to this type of thing in any video editor that you've used before would be able to do this. But this is also where you would keyframe as well. So say you wanted to zoom out, you could just add keyframes here by both the zoom and the position. And then say I wanted to end there. And put that back to 1, 0, 0. And there. Okay, if we wanted to add a little bit of text, like a lower third, you could bring your footage over here, and even without creating a new video track to put it on, just put it above whatever is there, and it will automatically create the required video track for you. This, where it says title, you just keep scrolling down in your inspector here and you'll find that as well. Okay. So I know a lot of people like to edit to the waveform in your audio. So you can actually grab, you notice I can just grab right here and stretch that out to make it bigger if you can't quite see your waveform very well. So that's how you do that. And let's find that piece of dialogue I had going on here. Expand that waveform. And do some automation on the audio real quick, just to show you how that works. The clip volume here, make sure that's selected, and keyframe there, it adds in the keyframe. Add another one, another one. Say this section here, I want to raise it up a little bit. I'll create, using the arrow keys on the keyboard for this to make it easier. Then I can grab the middle here and raise it the whole section. So that's how that works. Oh, another thing is if you have recorded audio, and in a lot of cases, like I have that on my little Lumix G7 camera, when you record with the mic input, it's recording in mono because the mic is mono, but it's a stereo microphone input jack, so it actually puts everything in the left speaker. So in order to fix that, you just right click on the clip itself and go to clip attributes. And then under audio, you would just tell it to use the embedded channel 1 as well for your right channel track, and that will give you kind of center adjusted audio. In this case, I wouldn't need to do it because I recorded this footage with my EVA1 and that wasn't needed. And if we turn on the mixer, we can adjust the overall volume of that track as well. Double click on these names if we want over here to rename them. Dialogue. So 2 ways of adjusting the volume there, either there, or you can adjust the volume on the clip itself here. And then obviously the overall volume of the entire mix. Like I said, you can go into Fairlight and really get into detail with an audio mix. I'm not going to do that in this video. A couple reasons. One, because I don't really use Fairlight much. It doesn't run very well on my computer. They do sell accelerator cards to run Fairlight. You don't need them apparently, but my computer, every once in a while, it does something weird in Fairlight and kind of freezes up. And other than that, Davinci has no issues on my system, so I just avoid it right now. So let's go to the Deliver tab, and we'll talk real quick about how you would render out your final footage. So first thing is down here, you'll see this, there's a selected kind of timeline. This little gray line here is showing you that it's going to render the entire thing when you've selected your settings and do what we're going to do next. But if you just wanted a section of it, you can actually do in and out points there too. I on the keyboard, O on the keyboard for your out. Now when whatever settings we put are now going to render out only that section, which is kind of cool if you just want to do a test render and see the video quality settings or whatever you'd want to see. So if you want to get it back, it's kind of weird. When you right click on it, there is no like getting rid of the marking in and out. But anywhere in Davinci Resolve, if you want to get rid of your in and out points, you just press Option X on your keyboard. Okay, so let's get into the settings. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. Let's just go through a basic YouTube output. So there is a preset. I just click on the preset. It kind of populates the basic info, but that's not good enough for me. I want a little bit better, so I go into custom. And I want to make sure the frame rate matches what my project is. And there's only two other settings really that I change. Is I bump up this restricted to quality here to 15,000 for a 1080p. You can look at, actually let's show you real quick, the recommended settings here on YouTube. Anyway, there's some reference anyways. I still bump it up higher than these settings just to start off with a better quality video so that when it gets re-encoded that it's not completely destroyed to nothing. And that whole thing is another subject with VP9 and H.265 possibilities. There's a lot going on in that world. Maybe one day I'll make a video on that. And the other setting that I click on here is multi-pass encode. That always seems to make a little bit better difference in the quality render. And in the audio section, we just leave the defaults there. AAC, data rate at 320 kilobits per second. File, you can actually put a name in here, but if you just click browse, because you want to tell it where you want the file to go. Let's just say I put it into this folder, for example. We'll name it test render. Anyway, if we hit, like, we can't just start render because, well, that's a render job that I had in there before. We can't just hit start render because there's nothing in the queue. All we got to do is click add to render queue. So see, this is a 1080p. If I wanted to at the same time, I could give myself a 4K version as well with the necessary changes for that. And now when I hit render, it's actually going to render both of those files for me. So, which is great because it takes a while to render sometimes, depending on how large the project is. That being said, I'm just going to remove that one real quick. You'll see, and I don't have the fastest system. I actually only have a 2 gig video card, but let's hit start render and I'll show you where you can see how quick it's rendering by the frame rate. Right up here in the top left here, this is showing you the frames that it's rendering. So it's a 24 frame per second video, and I'm rendering basically either real time or slightly above. Not too bad, considering the age of my machine. I'm not gonna render that because that edit is a piece of crap. I'll close that up and save often. Command S. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. It helps out the channel, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, I will see you in the next one.